In 3, 2, 1. Go ahead, President Reed.
Calling this meeting of the COVID-19 committee to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis.
Present.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Oh, it's Speaker.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Present.
Alderwoman Negracia. Alderwoman Murphy.
Here.
Alderman Coder.
Here.
Alderman Muhammad.
Here.
Alderman Odenberg.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Here.
Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Here.
President Reed.
Here.
Alderwoman Negracia. Alderwoman Middlebrook. 10 present, you have quorum.
Thank you. First, I want to thank everybody for attending today's meeting. We have quite a number of speakers. Madam Clerk, how many speakers we have signed up for today?
Let me check and see.
You have 13, Mr. President.
We have 13 speakers signed up for today. So to our 13 speakers, thank you for signing up to speak, and for the people who aren't speaking but just signed up to watch today's meeting, I want to thank you on behalf of the members of the Board of Aldermen. Any alderman, no alderman excused for the day? I will entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion. We approve the minutes of the meeting from.
Second. Moved by Alderman from the 23rd, second by Alderwoman from the 27th. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Negracia. Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderman Coder.
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad.
Aye.
Alderman Odenberg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
President Reed.
Aye.
10 aye votes.
By vote, staying the motion, the Alderman from 23rd and approved the minutes from the June 9th, 2020 meeting. So the board, we have one board bill up today, board bill number 49. Primary sponsor, Alderman Valmer. I'll give you a minute to just present the board bill to us, and then we'll move on to some speakers, and then we'll take the amendments up after that.
All right, Board Bill 49, as we went over last time, it's an ordinance where the Board of Aldermen is authorizing receipt of and appropriating funds fully to the extent received under the CARES Act, FEMA, grant with the Bureau of Justice Assistance Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding, keeping the CDBG Emergency Solutions Grant, the Housing Opportunities for People with AIDS, and the Ryan White Grant Programs, all relating to COVID-19 pandemic. It's basically taking money and distributing the money to the proper channels, and this board bill is the vehicle for that.
All right, thank you. So before we begin speakers, like I said, we have a lot of speakers today. I'm going to read through the procedures for webinar speakers. Number one, speakers will be called in the order they appear on the list, which is the same order in which they registered to speak. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak. Each speaker will be called by name when it's their time to speak by the clerk. Each speaker will speak on the topic of the hearing and related to the issues. Each speaker will be given a 1 minute mark when they have reached their point, when they have reached the 1 minute time point. So talk for 2 minutes, you'll hear that 1 minute bell, which is a very important time because you have 1 minute to wrap up after that. Each speaker will be told when their time is up. Once their time is up, a speaker is to stop talking unless the chair gives them additional time. Any participant may leave with written comments by sending them to the clerk of the Board of Aldermen, Mr. Terry Kennedy, at kennedyt@stlewismo.gov. And that's ST.Lewis, I believe that's -mo.gov, or by calling 314-589-6845. And hopefully everybody understands those. So you're going to be given 3 minutes apiece to just, make any comments you like concerning the bill before the board. And at 1 minute, when you have 1 minute left, you're going to be given notice that you have 1 minute left. And exactly at 3 minutes, we will be turning your mic off to go make it to the next speaker. And with that, I'm turning it over to the clerk to bring up the first speaker.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the first person to speak, get it here before me. Miss Alicia Jones.
So Miss Alicia Jones.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alicia Jones. I am the program director at Riverview West Florissant Development Corporation, located in the 27th Ward. I myself, with our organization, have partnered with 5 other organizations up under the Missouri Faith Leadership Council, and we've established the Village of Safe Space. We were operating as an after-school program until the pandemic came and we had to shift to COVID-19 relief efforts. Within the last 11 weeks, we have delivered food boxes weekly, not only to our program participants, but we've been able to reach out to our residents in the ward and build a quite lengthy database of residents that are in need of food, toiletries, mental health services, educational resources, and we've been able to provide those things through donations. Our organizations have testing sites that are coming up. Ours is next week on the 17th. Due to HIPAA, we will not be able to find out who is positive for COVID-19, but because we have a weekly contact list that we check in with our residents in our database every week, we have built the foundation and the trust that during those weekly conversations, if anyone on our list is testing positive for COVID-19, that they will be able to share that information with us. And our goal is to have our own contact tool to where we'll be able to get in contact with the people that they may have been in contact with and be able to encourage them to get testing as well. I feel as though COVID, the pandemic, really is just the water that has decided to boil and crack open the eggshell and let us take a look inside of our communities and see what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done. Mental health resources are so important right now during this pandemic, but they've been important prior to this pandemic. The pandemic is just bringing them to the forefront. We need additional resources to continue to reach out to our residents. Right now, we're across 9 zip codes. We can reach further and we can dig deeper if we have additional resources, and the grassroots organizations, we've already built the trust with the community, and that's going to be important.
1 minute. 1 minute.
Have other people that's calling, they may feel like they're being sort of attacked, but because we've established that relationship and bond, it's easier for us to get them to agree to those resources we can offer. So I am hoping that there are funds earmarked for the grassroots organizations for that purpose. Thank you for listening.
Mr. President, the next person to speak is Miss Lindsay Noblot.
Okay, and thank you so much, Mrs. Jones. That was great testimony. Welcome, Lindsay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lindsay Noblad. I'm a resident of the 7th Ward, but I also work at Southside Early Childhood Center, which is located in the 6th Ward. And I'm really excited and I'm thankful to everybody here for listening to the community and hearing that we need additional support for childcare providers. Right now, we're in a really difficult situation, ensuring that our staff is safe and also ensuring that our families are safe and our kiddos have what they need and we have the necessary supplies and PPE to ensure that when we do go back, because Southside is still closed and we will be closed until July 6th, but many other centers and homes are open right now. And so while the PPP grant from the government was helpful with payroll, it is still not enough to cover the additional costs that providers are going to be ensuing through all of this additional funding through extra staff members, extra supplies, etc. And so it's just really important that we continue to support our childcare provider community, many of which are women of color and serving some of our highest need populations in communities of color. This is an equity issue. This is a women's issue. This is an economic justice issue. So it's just really important. And I want to thank you guys for adding in that line item of $1.5 million. And so we're happy to work with you guys on how to best allocate this. In the county recently, they just started rolling out the allocations. And at first they did not include centers that had already received PPP into the mix. Now they have turned that around. So centers and homes that had received PPP can get the additional CARES Act funding. So I just want to raise that to your attention, that that's really extremely important because we need to ensure that all of our centers and home have access to any additional funds. Childcare is already something that's there is already not funded enough at the federal, state, and local level. So this is just one extra thing that will help
1 minute.
folks get above water and ensure that they can continue to provide high quality care for our littlest citizens in St. Louis City. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Noblat, for testifying.
Mr. Chairman, the next is, I believe it's pronounced Cortasia Collins.
Thank you. It's
Ms.
Cortega,
Collins.
but thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Okay,
Ms. Collins.
thank you for inviting me and allowing me to be a part of this process. My name is Cortega Collins, and I am a early childhood education provider. My center is located at 5990 Page Boulevard, and I am in the 22nd Ward. We have been operating there for over 11 years and providing what we consider to be high quality early childhood education to the underserviced families in those communities. So again, I just wanted to thank you all for allowing me to be a part of this conversation. And I also am thankful that more light is being shed on the work that early childhood educators do. And I want to just emphatically echo what Lindsay said and making a case and advocating for funds being allocated to early childhood education. It was good for us to get to have PPP funding available to us, but for those of us who are open or who have remained open, those funds have been depleted, and it will be imperative for us to be able to have access to additional funding to be able to safely continue operating in a post-COVID-19 culture. And so we need to replace, in order to safely adhere to the guidelines that were set by the CDC, which obviously we want to do to keep families and children and our staff safe. But in order to do that, we have to make changes to our environment and changes to our processes, changes to our staffing. And for most providers, especially those who are smaller centers like mine, sometimes being able to operate effectively could be cost prohibitive. And our payroll expenses is virtually doubled. In addition to our supplies and materials, we have to change our environment, replace materials that are deemed not necessarily safe in a post-COVID-19 culture. And there's just a lot of things that we have to do. And so I just want to make sure that people who may not necessarily be directly involved with early childhood education, that you fully understand the financial impact that this novel virus, this pandemic has had on our operations, and that we need additional funding to be able to continue to safely provide quality care to the children, to the most vulnerable, to a vulnerable population that we're servicing, not just the children, but their families as well. We want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to keep everybody safe, and additional funding will help us to be able to do that. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
The next speaker, Mr. Chairman, is Ms. Mary Crockett Smith.
Ms. Smith, you're recognized, and we really appreciate you coming to make comments today.
Thank you for having me. I'm here speaking on behalf of child care providers in the St. Louis City area. I'm located at 8923 Riverview Drive. I just wanted to add that throughout this entire pandemic, the Christian Academy has serviced first responders and essential children, and the cost of labor has doubled in order to provide the CDC mandates and expectations of St. Louis County, as well as the Missouri Health Department. Instead of having labor for one teacher of 10, we now have labor for 2 teachers at an additional 12 hours of service. We were already on a stretched budget. The PPP money that we received, instead of it going an entire 2.5 months, did not go the entire 2 months, because I had to not only pay 2 teachers to be with the same group because they could not leave the environment, but I also had to pay them for their lunch and sometimes provide lunch because they couldn't leave their classroom area. The PPP money was also spent on not only pay lunch breaks, double labor, but it was also hiring additional people just to solely clean the bathrooms. And every single time a different classroom or a different child went to the bathroom, this entire wipe down, sanitize, entire process had to happen throughout the facility. And it's from the waist down, doorways, etc. I had to hire a disinfecting company that does a electromagnetic static spray on Saturdays that really completely disinfects the building. We maintain this. We clean and sanitize throughout the day, at least twice a day, with an additional labor person cleaning as much as we can. But professionally, I had to have that happen. Rugs are serviced through Cintas every week instead of every month. And then on Saturdays, all rugs are steam cleaned throughout the facility. The PPP money was eaten up by the tremendous budget. In addition to that, we couldn't find one particular place to go get PPE. In my industry, gloves is basically what we need. We didn't have to have masks. And so having to go to other places, doubling the cost, sometimes masks would be $100 for 50. And now, and remember now, masks have to be exchanged throughout the entire day, but we couldn't get to masks, we couldn't get to toilet paper, we couldn't get into paper towels. The eating process is very costly because we can't wash dishes. We feed children every 2.5 hours in this industry. We had to throw away the cups. We had to throw away the silverware, the utilities. Everything that they eat with and touch not only had to be cleaned, sanitized, and wiped, but it also had to be disposed of if they were eating from it. Weekly, the cost could be for the additional electromagnetic cleaning. It'd be about
1 minute.
Okay, could be, monthly could be about $3,720 additional to my budget that was already a stretched budget, and I service children that are at risk. The increase in cost of food was tremendous. The increase just to get bleach, it became $5 a gallon. Sam's basically abandoned the small business, and we had to drive around all day. I had to get gloves from the beauty supply for $12.99 a pack. The purchasing of, I had to purchase a hand washing sink, a portable sink at the door for $2,900, so that the children who after they got the touchless temperature taken, the thermometer, that was costly, sometimes up to $175 just to try to get here in a timely manner. Then we can't let them throughout the building to wash their hands. So the most effective way, and that's what CDC said, always go the highest waste to make sure they can wash their hands at the door. Portable sinks with hot water are very, very expensive. We have additional trash pickup costs. I bought an entire new touchless attendance
It's
system.
past time, Mr. President.
All right. All right, thank you so much. Ms. Smith. You covered a lot of ground in that time. Thank you so much for that. It was
Thank you.
very, 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 very informative. Thank you.
Mhm. Next, we have Rochelle B.
Ms. B. Here.
Okay.
I am here. Thank you guys for having me this evening. I'm not for sure of what's going on with the video screen. It's stating on my end I can chime in, but it's not allowing me. I believe
Okay.
that Mary, Dr. Smith, Cortega, and Lindsay have all painted a picture of what it's like in early childhood now. So I don't want to repeat anything that they've stated. I do want to state that I was very excited to see that the 1.5 million get allocated from the CARES Act to the Early Childhood Center. It allowed me to think out a good 60 to 90 days of what our budgets may look like as we start to lose funding that the state had already allocated to us. Again, if you've received the PPP funds, that money has been expunged as we have had staff on to prepare for openings. For those that have been open, as we continue to service families that could not come in, because I want to make sure you all understand, even though we have had a reduction of capacity in our building, we still have to service families that were not allowed in the building by virtual learning, by making sure that they had needed materials, supplies, and food to assist them in all those manners. But what I was most concerned about is to ensure that the funding is allocated to an agency that would assist us with getting it out timely. It is my understanding that either health or the human services department may be an option, and I wanted you all to consider them to deploy the funds. At this point, we need a process that's going to assist us with getting funds timely. There's already a delay on accessing PPE equipment as we order it. So if there's a delay on accessing funding, it further pushes out the delay on ordering PPE supplies. So if you all could take this concept into consideration, I would greatly appreciate it, because every time we open the door, we are thinking out an additional 30 to 60 days to make sure that we have what is needed to service our children. Right around the corner, we're going to increase our capacity because public schools still haven't determined what they're going to do. So in addition to us servicing children that are birth through 5, we still have elementary children that are coming through our doors. We're in that phase 2. We're not really for sure what phase 3 is like. But as we communicate amongst us as early childhood professionals, we're trying to plan and prepare financially, but it is definitely a struggle. Again,
1 minute.
like everyone has stated, we have limited income that comes in, and this virus has thrown a wrench into our daily operations and it increased our bottom line number. So I would really, again, appreciate if you all consider giving these funds to a particular agency that would assist us in deploying them timely. I appreciate you guys' time, and thanks for having me.
All right, thank you, Ms. B.
Mhm. Next, Mr. Chairman, is, I believe it's Jama or Jama Dotson.
Ms. Dotson? Ms. Dotson, there she is. I think you have to unmute yourself.
I thought I unmuted, I guess.
There you go. Well, welcome, and thank you for taking time to testify today.
Thank you, President Reed, and the other members of the aldermen that are present today. I'm Jama Dodson, as already stated. I'm the Executive Director of the St. Louis Mental Health Board. We're located at the Mental Health Board in number 6, and I have lived for 20 years in the 15th ward. So I just wanted to say, regarding the getting the funds out to the children for early childhood programs, I'm really here to speak to that today. we have been mentioned as a possibility of being able to get the funding distributed from one of the city units to be able to provide services of getting the funds out quickly and timely. And just a little quick reminder of who we are. We've been doing grant making for 25 years. We started with the Mental Health Fund in 1994, and 10 years later, in 2004, we added the Children's Services Fund, which is one of the reasons we've been approached to potentially distribute the funds for the CARES program for early childhood. Though we are independent unit of government, we are not part of the city administration. We are a city governmental entity or taxing authority, and accountable to a board of directors for the activities that we provide. We've been funding programs for children for many, many years, as I've said, and I would just give you an example. We have in our own funds, we saw the emergency of the COVID-19 situation, and our board pulled out from reserves $500,000 of funding to make available for emergency programming. We were able to open the RFP, accept applications, review applications, and make decisions within 30 days. Our board acted on them
1 minute.
three days later, and we were able to have checks in the mail the very next week. So I know that the COVID-19 is very short time frame. It's got to be spent out by December 31st. And I think we are both equipped and very willing to do that. We are not taking any fee for this either.
Wow. Thank you so much, Ms. Dotson. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all the work that you guys do.
Next, there is Juan Narvaez.
Juan, Mr. Narvaez. Juan, thank you so much for
pronouncing
joining
it
us
incorrectly.
today. And are we pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, it's Juan Narvaez. It's Narvaez.
Narvaez.
Yes.
All right. Thank you
Partners.
so much. Thank you so much for
Okay.
joining us today.
Thank you for having me. So again, my name is Juan Narvaez. I live in St. Louis City, and I'm a tenant living in the 14th Ward. I belong to the STL Housing Defense Collective, and the following is one of our demands. The City of St. Louis shall not conduct any further displacements of encampments or settlements of the unhoused. As it was pretty publicized, and as it was an embarrassing episode on STL's timeline to our COVID-19 pandemic response, it went against all public opinion and CDC guidelines, and even a memo from the Sheriff's Office stating not to clear any encampments because of the public health concern. The city disrupted and issued eviction notices at 4 a.m. and had previously taken away washing hand stations, forcing the breaking of ties with advocates and organizers, and dispersing people into the community, causing frontline folks to lose contact with many unhoused individuals, and even today. Our city defenders defended the encampment community by asking for a temporary restraining order against the city because the city did not have enough shelter beds. So repairing and forging relationships with those community stakeholders is very important to us. That those that are out on the forefront and is needed to fulfill our demand. Which means listening to what they have to say, learning and accepting. These stakeholders should include the MO network, the Continuum of Care, Tent Mission, STL. And I hope that the Sobering Center truly comes into fruition, and that this project would be working with and communicating with outreach workers on the ground. Seeing how in 2017 and 2018, overdose deaths increased by 23% in St. Louis, and even more in the county at 30%. This is very much warranted as pull and push factors relates to the unhoused population, especially considering the effect that this bleak pandemic already has been on people, which have induced drug relapses with many. We demand that the city is intentional on who responds to the unhoused community and send in frontline workers that are more equipped to meet their needs, rather than sending in the police that are only trained in violence. As we all know that the unhoused are criminalized just for existing, and in St. Louis, Black individuals are 4 times as likely to be unhoused than white individuals. And the police simply do not meet the standards to responding to this community. Do not use the police in any matters involving the unhoused. St. Louis should view this as an opportunity to centering trauma-informed care, public health, and public safety, which means building back up the trust and working with those who know better the needs of the unhoused during the crisis. This crisis, which are real people's lives that are in your hands. So put your trust into the advocates and organizers that are out there that truly have the best interest of the community at heart. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juan. Juan, do you have your points, all the things that you just covered, do you have that written out where you can email it to the board so that we can send it out to all the members of the board? I think you made some great points in there.
Yes, we have some other speakers, so we'll be more than happy to send that out.
Yeah, I would like to, I know you have other speakers, but if you all could also present give us something that we can get out to other members of the board, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, there is John Bonacorsi.
John, you're up.
Thank you. My name is John Bonacorsi. I'm a Skadden Fellow and staff attorney at Arch City Defenders. I'm also here today speaking in support of and in partnership with the STL Housing Defense Collective. At Arch City, we see firsthand the wave of evictions that are on the horizon, and we are already seeing, with the uncertainties that are existing within the courts, how landlords are abandoning the judicial eviction process and taking matters into their own hands to conduct illegal self-help evictions. And that is why we believe it is absolutely fundamental that the city prioritize, both in its general budget and in its CARES Act funds, direct rental, mortgage, and utility assistance so that people are able to stay in their homes during this pandemic. It is absolutely imperative at this time, where there are so many people who are unable to work to support themselves, and where simply being unable to shelter in your home puts your health at risk, that our city makes certain that its community members are able to remain safely housed. One of the most efficient and cost-effective ways of accomplishing this is ensuring that people can pay their rents, their mortgages, and their utilities. And if we as a city fail to adequately deal with this looming crisis on the front end, we will then waste funds dealing with the fallout when we have to respond to the emergencies that are created when people lose their homes and are in need of emergency services. This is why we are calling on city officials to prioritize direct assistance in its budget, in particular rental, mortgage, and utility assistance. And as one final point, I simply want to highlight how important it is that these funds are dispersed quickly and that they're dispersed in a way that people can easily access without onerous burdens or documentation requirements, so that people are truly able to access these funds and to remain in their homes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, next there is, let me see now, Glenn Burley.
Burley, I know Glenn. Hey, Glenn.
Lewis.
You've
Hear
gone.
me?
It looks like you've gone blonde.
No, it's just gray.
Okay.
It's very gray. Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Go ahead, Glenn. You're up.
All right. So yes, my name is Glenn Burley. I'm community engagement specialist for St. Louis Equal Housing and Opportunity Council. We are the area's fair housing initiative program partner with HUD, which means that we provide fair housing enforcement work on both sides of the river in St. Louis metropolitan area. So I'm here today to echo a lot of the talk that has been sort of happening around renters in the last few speakers. if folks have been watching the news, in the last day, both USA Today and CNBC have run big articles about a potential wave of evictions that will be coming down the line. As you probably know, the expanded unemployment insurance payments are about to end. At the same time, a lot of folks that may have been called back to work as service employees aren't making what they used to, right? Your waitress maybe has a shift, but they're pulling in half as much in tips now as they were prior to the crisis. And so in many ways, if you look at who's been impacted by this crisis, it's been primarily lower income people, primarily service industry workers, people of color, which means that this crisis, unlike the last housing crisis, is really tailor-made to hurt renters, unfortunately. And we live in a city that is majority renter. So that's not good for our real estate system, right? We're here to, encourage the Board of Aldermen to fund mediation services and to work to make them mandatory. There's a lot of talk about money going to help people to stop them from getting evicted in the first place. We need some way to pipeline people into that money, right? And what we've seen, EHOC has worked with Washington University, Legal Services of Eastern Missouri, and others over the past few years on a smaller mediation program with the Pro Se Court. And when landlords and tenants do take advantage of it, we've seen a 40% reduction in eviction compared to the folks that don't take advantage of the mediation. And we believe that, that would, only expand if it was made mandatory, But so we want to point out that, the mediation process is a point of intervention in this process. The wave of evictions we're potentially looking at is a couple months off as sheriffs and other moratoriums lift, as expanded unemployment goes away, etc. We're looking at a court system that frankly is not able to handle the amount of eviction proceedings that are potentially coming. We also have to deal with the reality is that with a lot of tenant screening services and stuff, if you have any eviction filed against you, whether or not you win or whether or not the landlord or tenant wins, that is held against the tenant when they apply for the next apartment. So as much as possible, we want this to be pre-court. We want to be able to follow those that prevents them from having that court case, which also saves the landlord money because they're not having to pay filing fees or attorneys, right? So, we really see the mediation program as a way
That's the time.
to help deal with this.
All right. Thanks, Glenn. Thank you.
Next, we have Pastor Charles Norris.
Pastor Norris, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hello, good morning, President Reed, and to the rest of the Board of Aldermen. I'd like to speak on behalf of the Village Safe Spaces program. I believe it is imperative for us to continue funding for these types of grassroots organizations. We currently have funding that is set to run out at the end of the month. We are looking for other sources to continue this program. As Ms. Alicia Jones stated earlier, we were originally an after-school program that then repurposed ourselves because of the pandemic to meet the needs of our families. Thus far, since March, we have served over 14,000 households in terms of meeting food needs for them, serving them once a week. Of that 14,000, we have over 7,500 youth. There are 1,000 seniors and 12 persons with disabilities. This program is a little unique in that we actually deliver the food to our participants. And furthermore, we have established relationships with these people that provide the type of personal contact that is needed to build relationships in marginalized neighborhoods. Many do not have transportation. So our services that we provide for them, in addition to food and toiletries, we provide education support. While school was in session, we were providing lesson plans to some of our students and tracking them in terms of doing their work. One of the things that we have found out during this pandemic is that distant learning does not work well. Those students that are behind are going to be left further behind. And so this ability for us to reach into these families and provide them the assistance, we've worked with Sumner and Dunbar and Hickey elementary schools so that we've provided some iPads for students. And so we think it is critically important for us to not pull the plug on these over 14,000 student families that we're now assisting on a regular basis. And then I'd also like to say that of those nonprofits that are working, all of them have major churches that are connected with them. I stand not as myself, but Reverend Witherspoon with Washington Metropolitan AME Zion Church, Reverend McDuffie at Lane Tabernacle, Reverend Crumpton at Code Brilliant. We are all collaborating together so that we can make sure the needs of these neighborhoods are met. And finally, I would just like to say that in terms of these grassroots organizations, we also cross many different wards, wards 4, 6, 18, 22, 26, and 27. And so while we have not been doing this as long as others, our reach and depth into the neighborhood is substantial. It is augmented with churches that have been in existence for over 100 years. And I just would implore you all to seriously consider providing some funds so that we might be able to continue to meet the needs of these families and continue to walk with our students as they go into this new school year, which they don't know what it's going to look like quite yet, but they will need some additional relationship building. They will need someone that they trust so that we can continue to navigate through this pandemic with them. Thank you.
Pastor Norris, I just want to thank you for all your work in the community beyond the Village Safe Space program. I know you have all sorts of other things that you work on in the community. I don't know where you find the time, but I am thankful that you somehow find the time to do it. And you said the Village Safe Space program is set to funding to run out at the end of the month?
Correct.
All right, thank you. And do we have a budget or anything? Could you send us some additional information?
Yes, we have a budget that is already, detailed budget that is available right now.
All right, could you send it to my office so that we have it also?
Okay.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, you have Ms. Sharon D. Jones.
Yes, I'm present.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, President Reed and the rest of the members of the board. My name is Sharon Jones. I live in the 8th Ward, and I'm a member of the St. Louis Housing Collective. The STL Housing Defense Collective, exists to protect St. Louisans from the impact associated with housing insecurity presented by the COVID pandemic, impending evictions and utility shutoffs, and advocating for the unhoused. Now, we know that moratoriums are expiring all over the country. And since the moratoriums toward evictions and utility shutoffs are fast approaching, one of our demands is to extend the moratorium both on evictions and utility shutoffs for an additional 120 days. Folks in our communities need more time and just need more time in general, and a definite date by which evictions will commence. 120 days will give time for mediation, as Glenn mentioned. 120 days will give time for mediation, time to apply for the programs and funds that your committee will distribute. Folks need time, if necessary, to find housing or to negotiate with landlords. If we do not extend the moratorium on utilities and evictions, coupled with staggering unemployment Expirations on moratoriums will create a rental crisis. Without the extension of moratoriums, the city of St. Louis faces unprecedented unhoused population in the midst of a global pandemic and social unrest. And we know that there are implications towards social unrest that have been witnessed. To be sure, St. Louis City and cities across the nation experienced injustice in housing before the pandemic. The pandemic just exacerbated this inequity. According to an editorial in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and I quote, data analysis from evictions nationwide between 2012 and 2016 showed that evictions were filed against Black renters at twice the rate of white renters. Black women in Missouri had evictions filed against them at more than twice the rate as white renters experienced during this period. And similar ratios were at play for utility shutoffs as well. If we do not extend moratoriums on utilities and evictions, courts and sheriffs will be stagnated by the sheer number of cases that will be processed. There will be increased burdens on the resources that are already committed to the unhoused population. So we think that it is imperative to keep people in their homes.
1 minute.
Other cities like Ithaca are ensuring the health and safety of their tenants by canceling rent and utilities. We urge this committee to influence the mayor, judges, and fellow auditors to implement our demands. We want to mitigate some of the effects of the expiration of the moratorium by urging that this body extend it by 120 days. Again, we at the St. Louis Housing Collective urge this committee to support and take up our demands, and we believe the committee has a purview to do so. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jones.
See here. Next, we have Ms. Sarah Watkins.
Sarah, thank you for joining us. You're up.
Thank you for allowing our comment today. My name is Sarah Watkins. I'm a renter in the 6th Ward, and I'm also here to represent the St. Louis Housing Defense Collective. We're testifying today to present the collective's demands as this committee decides how the city plans to use the CARES Act funds. One of the demands is for the city of St. Louis to spend CARES Act funding to create a rental assistance fund for families in St. Louis with school-age children. It's no secret that Black communities have been hit the hardest by the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, Black women in St. Louis, data shows that we have been impacted the most than any other group in this city. So yet again, we are getting the worst end of systemic oppression that's perpetuated by white supremacy and capitalism, two systems that thrive in this city. And quite frankly, they're enforced through a history of racist policies and intentional disinvestment and gatekeeping of resources. From underfunding of schools to environmental racism, food deserts, you name it, Black people are fighting against it. But this pandemic, like others have mentioned on this call, is specifically hitting renters the most. And in this city, a large number of our residents are renters, and that includes Black women who are raising families. Some of these are single mothers who have limited sources of incomes, and those have been stretched even thinner during this pandemic. So this community has been showing up for our neighbors before and during this crisis through multiple mutual aid funds that have been launched across the city, assisting people with things like food, meals, diapers, financial support, and more. And although the state is opening back up, unemployment is still high. And for mothers with children, finding childcare during the summer during a pandemic is challenging and costly, not to mention utilities and rent and mortgage that is still due for most of us who aren't covered under the moratoriums in place. And that will be ending soon. And some people haven't even received their stimulus yet. So we need rental assistance that's swift and accessible. Creating a rental assistance program specifically for people with kids is common sense, and the process should include the impact of those should include the input of those who are impacted the most. So I ask this committee to consider the future of St. Louis as these funds are allocated. Please act now to protect Black women and children from displacement and keep us all in our homes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for your testimony, and I really appreciate all of the points that you covered in such a short period of time. Thank you. Thank you so much.
The final person on the list, Mr. President, is Kennard Williams.
Kennard, you're up. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, President Reed. Thank you, members of the board. My name is Kennard Williams. I am testifying on behalf of the STL Housing Defense Collective. One of the demands the collective has is that no CARES Act funding be allocated to policing or corrections. This is in line with national calls to defund the police that originated in response to the protests following the murder of George Floyd and the national wave of violence perpetuated by police that followed. Citizens of St. Louis do not pay taxes to fund and outfit a repressive police force that utilizes weapons of war in our communities on an almost annual basis. We are tired of seeing our tax dollars shoveled into a fire as we see our communities transformed into war zones. Nor do we pay taxes for the further maintenance and operation of incarceration sites like the workhouse, which calls have been outstanding to close for. The choice to keep it open is further taking needed taxpayer resources from things like housing. In the last week, we've seen massive protests and curfews in response meant to do nothing more than control and regulate Black bodies and give police carte blanche to harass anyone they wish to after 9 p.m. Lastly, more than half of the St. Louis City budget is already allocated towards arrest and incarcerate. The police department and corrections should be forced to look within themselves and see where budget cuts should be allocated in order to acquire their needed equipment. The rest of St. Louis is tired of seeing their behavior incentivized year after year with more funding at the cost of providing basic minimum services needed to keep our citizens off of the streets and with a roof over their head. This is not the above and beyond, but the bare minimum our city needs to do if we are to make it through this pandemic. COVID cases are steadily rising. Many people still don't have jobs to go back to. Others are losing their homes and unemployment. Without maximum action taken to ensure that all this money goes to the places it needs to, it is important for the community to understand that by investing more funds into the police and corrections at a time where so many people are struggling for the bare minimum, you're essentially turning your backs on St. Louisans who will be the victims of the next housing crisis and the eviction crisis. In turn, seeding the next protest. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Williams, for your testimony.
That completes the list, Mr. President.
Right, now I'm gonna go through the members of the board to see if there are any questions or if you have any questions or comments from any of the speakers that we heard or any comments before we move on to hearing from the primary sponsor and also other members of the mayor's office on the amendments that we have to the bill today. Alderwoman Davis, any questions or comments before we move forward?
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't have any questions, but I shall have a couple of comments. I do appreciate the speakers. I appreciate their passion and all of their work that they have put into our community to help others. But I also would like to share that even before the pandemic, we have agencies who have always worked expeditiously to help families in crises, and there have not been delays, and go overboard to make sure that they are well received and get all of their needs taken care of. What most people don't know is that as we move forward, we don't want to make a mistake and delay of trying to start something new, but we want to move fast with systems that work. And that's, I say that all the time. I want to make sure people are being served and not people sitting around talking about something for 2 years and it never gets moved. So I'm really excited about the speakers that I heard, and I do want to see them stay involved and continue to give input. Our budget does reflect most of the things that they had demands for. That's another plus that normally doesn't happen, but the budget does reflect that. So that's a good thing. And I want the small daycares to know that there is an additional pot of money that is going to be made available. But also, if you did not apply for funding in this first and/or second round, please apply now. I know Midwest Bank is taking up the mantle to really move the process extremely fast. Enterprise Bank is doing it because you know those turn into grants. You won't have to pay the money back. Also, there's a lot of assistance from these entities. So make sure that you double back if you were denied. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Alderman Vaquero.
There we go. No, I don't. I mean, it seems to me like these are all really good, good causes, you know. So I have nothing. I'll wait. I know you said we're gonna have some of this in writing also.
Yes.
Will we be making a decision today on some of this?
We're going to be voting on the bill and voting on the amendments today.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I'll be
then
here.
it'll be second read, and during the perfection phase on the floor, you'll also have a chance to do additional changes.
Right. Okay. I'll be here. I'm just gonna be listening.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman Hubbard.
Thank you, Mr. President, and members of the board, and all of the speakers that came on today. I really appreciate hearing your testimony. I think that's what we all need to hear, how this has definitely impacted those smaller organizations. My hope is just that, like I said the last week when we talked about it, that these particular monies get down to those organizations that definitely try to meet the needs of impoverished people and some of our most vulnerable citizens, because so many times in the city when we allocate monies, those monies go to certain token organizations and the work doesn't get done. So I hope that during a crisis that we have now, that we definitely go above and beyond and use the proper process to take care of our most vulnerable constituents. And that's all I have, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Alderwoman Hubbard. Alderwoman Ingracia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do not have any questions, but just want to echo the comments of my colleagues, appreciating people taking time out of their day to let us know what they think is important in terms of allocation of funding.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman Murphy.
Yes, same here, no questions. I want to thank all the speakers that came. I said there was very excellent presentations, and of course we have an awful lot of things to consider. And but I'm glad they came and let us know what's going on. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman Coder.
No questions, Mr. President.
All right. Alderman Muhammad.
Hey, thank you, Mr. President. I have no questions, but I do want to thank every speaker that presented this morning. It's important when we have citizen engagement and input, and I am just appreciative of all their comments and all their experiences. And I hope that they know that the city of St. Louis is doing everything that we can to assist and aid them in this pandemic time. Thank you, Mr. President. And I also want to publicly acknowledge you, Mr. President, for putting together this special committee that is committed and dedicated to making sure that we employ the resources to our city. So thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Alderman. I appreciate that. Alderman Oldenburg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have no comments or questions. I appreciate the speakers. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
No questions, thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we'll recognize the primary sponsor of the bill so that we can start going through the amendments. And I would imagine you have various different speakers to speak on the amendments, but I recognize you right now for a motion to bring the bill before us, and then we will move on from there.
You ready for me? We have the bill.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion that I can't make a motion. I'm not on the committee, sir. So
No, but do you have a number of speakers with us?
we have the mayor's office, I believe, is here. Yes.
All right. Would you like to talk about the bill any further before we?
I believe it's pretty self-explanatory. It's just getting funds in and dispersing them to the proper things. We have some amendments as to some grammar and some numbers that were misprinted. But if the mayor's office has some input, we are open to that. I believe they're present at the meeting.
All right. Alderwoman Davis, you recognized on a motion to get the bill before us, and then we will move from there.
Well, if she doesn't, I'll make a motion that we put it in front of
I
us.
think she's trying to unmute.
There we go. I'm sorry, it took me a second. I'm so busy listening and I forget I got to unmute.
Yeah.
I want to make a motion to move Board Bill 49 before us for
Been
passage.
moved by the Alderwoman
Second.
from the 19th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 13th and the 23rd. So now, Alderwoman from the 19th, would you like to make the motion for the First Amendment, and then we will go to the any of the speakers that the alderman from the 10th may have on the amendment.
Mr. President, I move that we
Adopt
put amendment number one before us for consideration.
It's been moved by the alderman from the 19th, entertained, seconded by the alderman from the 13th. And I think I may have heard the alderman from 23rd also. So Alderman from the 10th, would you like to cover what's in amendment number one? And then we'll
Certainly. Everyone has the amendment in front of them.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. We are going to, it's page 5, line 7 to page 5, line 17, beginning where it says after the words expenditures previously incurred. And you see the paragraph we're going to be adding. In addition to those positions, the personal expenses authorized in the table of organization and personal pay schedule and annual operating plans for the fiscal years 2020 and 2021, Director of the Department of Health and Hospitals hereby is authorized to employ 1 health service manager, 2 position code 5682, grade 18M, according to the Civil Service Classification Plan and the Compensation Plan. 1 health service manager, 1 position code 5681, grade 17M, according to the Civil Service Classification Plan and Compensation Plan. And 4 public health educators, position code grade 15G, according to the Civil Service Classification Plan and the Compensation Plan. And the Director of the Department of Health and Hospitals is authorized to pay salaries and benefits for such employees in whole or in part from the CARES fund appropriated in this section. And that'll be the amendment. If anyone from the mayor's office would like to speak to this, I'm open to that.
Alderman, this is Steve Conway.
Thank you, Steve.
Yes, amendment number 1 is just making sure that we have a table of organization so that the people that are put on to handle the programs, that the personnel director will advertise, and we've appropriated a table of organization. There'll be 2 more of those in those amendments for the other employees that are being paid for with the CARES Act as you go through each of these. And that's the reason why I absolutely by law have to have that in the bill.
Any further discussion on amendment number 1? Any further discussion on amendment number 1? No questions on amendment number 1. So it's been moved by the Alderman from 19th, second by the Alderman from 13th, that we adopt amendment number 1. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Negracia,
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin. I'm sorry, Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderman Coder. Alderman Muhammad.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
President Reed,
Aye.
Alderman Coulter,
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook. 11 aye votes.
I vote staying the motion of the Alderwoman from the 19th and adopted amendment number 1. Alderwoman from the 19th, would you like to make a motion for amendment number 2?
I move for the adoption of amendment number 2.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 19th, entertain a
Second, Mr. President.
second by the Alderman from the 21st and the Alderman from the 13th. Alderman from the 10th, you're recognized on amendment number 2.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the committee. Amendment 2 to Board Bill 49 is again page 5, line 18 to page 5, line 18 as follows. Strike out the word thereon and insert in lieu thereof for expenditures authorized under this section. So that's a simple amendment. If anyone from the mayor's office would like to clarify the reason for this, we're open for that. Please proceed.
Mr. Conway?
Is so that the other language flows smoothly on the other amendments as we add the people from the table of organization.
All right, any discussion on amendment number 2? Is there a request for previous roll?
Previous roll.
There's been a request for previous roll. Hearing no objection, motion carries. Adopted amendment number 2. Entertain a motion for amendment number 3.
I'll make a motion, we adopt amendment number 3.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 23rd and seconded by the Alderman from the 13th that we adopt amendment number 3. Alderman from the 10th.
All right. On amendment number 3, we're moving to page 6, line 5, page 6, line 11. After the words, any expenditures previously incurred, we will be inserting, in addition to those positions and personnel expenses authorized in the table of organization and personnel pay schedule in the annual operating funds for the fiscal years 2020 and 2021, the Director of the Department of Human Services hereby is authorized to employ 1 Executive Assistant 2, position code 1629, grade 17M, according to the Civil Service Classification Plan, to be paid on a per performance basis. The Director of the Department of Human Services is authorized to pay salaries and benefits for such employee from the CARES funds appropriated in this section. Anyone from the mayor's office cares to clarify? Please proceed.
Yeah, the director of the Department of Human Services, Valerie Russell.
Good afternoon, President Reed and the members of the Board of Aldermen.
Good afternoon.
This is just an amendment to allow us to hire 1 individual who can assist with the administration and coordination of the additional contracts that we are going to have to enter into in order to get these funds out in an expeditious manner and to make certain that all of the documentation and expenditures are in fact captured.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion on amendment number 3? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to back up briefly. So can someone tell me what the total number of new employees will be to help facilitate these monies and what that total amount will be?
Mr. Conway?
Yes. Okay, this is Steve. So there'll be 2 persons through the Department of Human Services. And then Dr. Eccles, are you available?
Yes, he's online. Dr. Eccles?
Yes, I am.
Tell you how many contact tracers those other positions we're filling with the funds.
All right, so the total number of contact tracers is 15 that'll be hired for the health department. And that the purpose of that is to make sure we have sufficient capacity for the fall and winter months, which is when we expect to see a second surge of COVID-19 cases, but also other cases of respiratory illness in the city of St. Louis.
Okay, and what's the total amount of those positions? The dollar amount that will be allocated for those staffing positions?
Well, Dr. Eccles is in the health department. We have, if you look at Exhibit A, is what everyone is working off. Over the period, that would be $2 million with benefits, et cetera, over the 2-year period. Dr. Eccles' department also has some communication outreach people. And Doctor, you want to expound on that?
Right, so part of the challenge with the COVID-19 response has been communication, making sure we have efficient communication methods in place and resources in place. And so this, the purpose for enhancing public health communication is to make sure that the health department can properly communicate information to the community at large, as well as to elected officials and other special stakeholders about where we are with COVID-19, but also other public health issues that may be impacting health outcomes across the city of St. Louis.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any
Mr.
further,
President.
any further discussion? Any further questions? It's been moved by the Alderman from the 23rd and seconded by the Alderman from the 13th that we adopt
Previous roll.
Number 3. It's been a request from previous roll by the Alderman from the 23rd. Hearing no objection, motion carries. Amendment number 3 has been adopted. Recognize anyone for a motion for amendment number 4.
I'll make the motion.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the
Second.
23rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 21st, that we adopt amendment number 4. Alderman Ballmer, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the committee.
They got to read every one of these.
We're going to be going to page 6, line 12. Strike out the word thereon and insert for expenditures authorized under this section. Merely language to clarify what we just performed.
All right. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 23rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 21st. Any further discussion? Any further discussion on amendment number 4?
I have a question, President Reed.
Alderman from the 6th, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't know if we're all looking at the same copy, but the copy of the bill I have, there's the word thereon is not on page 6, line 12.
Does she have an updated copy of the bill, or is it?
Because one was sent today.
If you downloaded the one today, it may have had those that they're on already changed. Is that correct? I'm asking.
Okay, you can continue. I'll make sure I'm looking at the right copy. Thank you.
Okay.
Right.
Anything further on that?
Nothing for me, sir. I don't believe it's I believe it's
Okay.
simply just grammar.
All right. It's been moved by Alderman from the 23rd, seconded by Alderman from 21st. Is there a request for previous roll?
Previous roll.
Objection.
Been an objection to previous roll. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro, Alderwoman Hubbard,
Aye.
I was trying to unmute my phone. Sorry, I couldn't get my thing unmuted.
Alderwoman Ingracia,
No.
Alderwoman Murphy,
Aye.
Alderman Coder, Alderman Muhammad,
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
President Reed,
Aye.
Alderman Coder, Alderwoman Middlebrook. 9 aye votes and 1 no vote.
I vote to sustain the motion, Alderman from the 23rd. I'll entertain a motion for amendment number 5.
I'll make a motion for amendment number 5.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 23rd.
Second.
Seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. Any discussion? Alderman from the 10th, you're recognized on amendment number 5.
Amendment number 5, we're moving to page 8, line 20, to page 9, line 3. Being on page 8, after the words city treasury for payment thereon, and we're going to insert the following paragraph. In addition to those positions and personnel expenses authorized in the table of organization and personnel pay schedule and the annual operating plans for the fiscal years 2020 and 2021, the director of the Department of Human Services hereby is authorized to employ 1 contract compliance officer, position code 1662, grade 14G, according to the civil service classification plan and the compensation plan, whose salary and benefits shall be paid from the ESG CV funds appropriated in this section. And that will, anyone from the mayor's office would like to expound on that, please feel free.
Mr. Conway?
Yeah, when the director had spoke about 2 employees, this is one of the 2 employees. We just had it in 2 different places, and that's why you have a separate amendment for the contract compliance person.
All right, thank you. And for the Alderwoman of the 6th, I don't know, do you have a numbered copy where the lines are numbered and everything?
Yes, I'm toggling between the one that was downloaded
Okay, got
today in the drive and also on the website, and my page numbers do not line up.
Okay, all right. But you should be able to find that section, like it starts with city treasurer. Treasury is in the 2nd paragraph.
No, I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that if we're making amendments, we're making them to the correct lines. And
Yes.
I don't have a correct copy of the bill, which is problematic.
Okay. All right, but if you, any further discussion?
Mr. President, before we move forward, because we do know that we have sent the appropriate documents out, let's give the Alderwoman from the 6th Ward a moment to be in the right place.
Okay.
Because they did send out an update. We may not have the right one in the Google Docs because I took my information and brought it over from what was recently sent today.
Okay,
So let's,
got it.
yeah, give her a moment to double check that.
Okay, yeah, so if you go to,
I appreciate that. I do not need a moment.
okay.
I'm in the Google
You
Drive
got it.
that the clerk sent it. It's not a correct copy, the one that's in the Google Drive or the one that's on the website. So please feel free to carry on. I'm happy to just vote no.
Okay, okay.
Otherwise, can we share it? Maybe Joe can share it.
No, or in the document that you have, if you go to section 8, and if you go to the last couple sentences, you'll see the city treasury for payment thereon.
Could someone email it right now?
Did you get it?
I'm fine. I'm not
All right, no, I was talking to the Alderman from the 6th.
You guys keep going. I'm
Okay.
fine.
All right, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 23rd, seconded by the Alderman from the 13th that we adopt amendment number 5. Is there a request for previous roll?
Previous roll.
Hearing no objection, motion carries.
Mr. President, do you mind if I interject again? I don't feel comfortable moving forward. This is a lot of work. It's very important. I don't want anybody to think that we are not trying to provide the accurate information to each person on this committee. I want us to take a moment, somebody from the mayor's office, email the correct copy to the alderperson of the 6th Ward, okay? That's the only way that we can say that we have done our job appropriately today.
Mr. Conway?
Mr. President Reed, Madison is going to go ahead and send her the copy right this minute that will line up with the actual amendment.
Right, that's the
Okay.
proper.
All right.
way to do it. All right.
And we can let Dr. Eccles talk a little bit on some of the PPE questions if you'd like in the meantime.
All right. Dr. Eccles, do you want to cover some of the PPE questions?
Yes, thank you, President Reed and the board and the committee. So the health department has been providing personal protective equipment to long-term care facilities, early childhood centers, as well as other community-based organizations across the city of St. Louis since the beginning of the COVID-19 response. A couple of the questions that were raised by some of the community members alluded to the fact that they had experienced difficulty obtaining PPE for their business. And so at this time, if you're still experiencing any difficulty obtaining PPE, please reach out to the City of St. Louis Department of Health and we'll help provide that PPE for you. You can either call us at 314-657-1528, or you can send us an email at health@stlouis, that's STLOUIS-MO.gov, and we'll make sure we get the resources to you in a timely manner.
All right.
In addition to that, there's also been questions about testing. So I hope everyone knows that through the work that's been done through the mayor's office and the health department, we've been able to secure enough testing supplies so that we're able to offer testing, COVID-19 testing to anyone in the city that needs it. I think we're the first city, the only city in the state of Missouri that has made this, created this initiative because we wanted to make sure that testing was available to everyone. And so now, regardless of symptom profile, if you have symptoms or not, if you have a known exposure, anyone that wants a COVID-19 test can get a COVID-19 test. We're working with the federally qualified health centers and they're doing an amazing job providing the service to city residents as well as individuals across the region.
Any questions for the health director? Any questions for the Alderwoman from the 19th?
Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Eccles, I noticed that there was a news story on Channel 4, I think it was yesterday, and they were going out of their way to say how difficult it was for people to either have a certain phone number answered or getting an appointment. And I do know that earlier this week, we sent out a notice, and I think it's 5 or 6 sites where you can get tested. You don't have to go through a triage. You don't have to have insurance. And the city of St. Louis made sure of that. And you emphasize you want every individual to be tested. So I think it's important that we get that cleared up. The story was geared toward, we were making it difficult, the city was.
Right, I think one of the challenges whenever there's an initiative like this, there's always some opportunity to try to poke holes in the initiative. Our ultimate goal is to make sure this service is available to everyone. So we have reached out to the federal qualified health centers to make sure that any errors in the or any issues they're having with their phone lines were addressed. And so the numbers that are available on the city's website, which is stlouis-mo.gov, has been updated and corrected. So individuals that need an appointment can call those numbers listed to get one.
All right. Any further questions of Dr. Eccles? Any further questions of Dr. Eccles? No further questions. Mr. Conway, has that document been emailed to the Alderwoman of the 6th?
Yes, the document is being emailed now. Mr. Conway has stepped out of the room.
Okay, so he stepped out of the room to email the document?
Yes, he's He's returning now. They want to know if his mail has gone to.
No, is the clerk is visiting with Madison, because they had worked on this morning. We could go ahead and move to amendment number 6, Mr. President, because that one's easy.
All right, so entertain a motion for amendment number 6.
I'll make the motion for amendment number 6.
Moved by the Alderman from the 23rd. Entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the Alderman from the 13th. Alderman from the 10th, you're recognized to talk about amendment number 6. Alderman from the 10th. You need to unmute. So instead of covering the line, instead of covering, instead of talking about line numbers, just go.
Well, this one doesn't, this one's good because it doesn't have a line number on it.
I know, but
It's
but
custom
talk,
made for this part of the program.
yeah, but talk about the section that is in that would be
It's to amend Board Bill Page Exhibit A. Beginning line program cost / administration, it's striking out a number, 1,840,586.
Okay.
And inserting this number, 1,084,059. So it's instead of 1,840,586, it's 1,084,059. Looks like it was a typo.
Okay, so we're anywhere in that, and
Can't it just be a
anywhere in the-
Scribner's error?
yeah, anywhere in there where we find 1,840,586 we're gonna change that to 1,084,059.
Mr. President, I have a question.
Yes, Alderman from the 6, you're recognized.
It would seem to me that we would also want to update if it needs to be the total amount. If there's an Excel sheet formula in here under CDBG funds, that the $10,840,568 might need to be changed as well.
Exactly.
I'm trying to add it quickly here.
The mayor's office.
Well, does the mayor's office, is this an additional, in the total sum? Anyone from the mayor's office?
We're here. It was a transposition error that Matt Moak had talked about, and Nevena is going to tell you. So all we were doing was correcting the transposition error.
All right, but
We added
About the
public
10%.
services, remember, we added that extra amount.
Yeah, that's about the 10%.
mayor's office,
Right,
you all are live on the mic. Mr.
Give me one.
Mr. Conway, get your team together because you guys are live on the mics right now, and I would like to just have one person talking. I'm hearing several voices.
I apologize about that.
This is Nevena Chamoff.
Hello, everyone. Nevena Sharma from the mayor's office. What that change is the small business support SLDC. That's supposed to be 10% of the total CDBG, so it was a little typo there. But the difference was put to the second line program. I'm sorry, the third one, public service food delivery. My goodness, it's hard to line up these items. Yes, the public services food delivery elderly. So it was just transposition between of the 10% of the 10,840,000.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I guess what I'm asking is in the total amount, if you're gonna update this and make it correct, it looks to me like it should, the total for CDBG fund should be 10,084,059, not 10,840,000, right?
Total's correct.
The total is correct. The total is correct. The difference just is gonna move from the 1,084,000, which is the program cost admin, which is supposed to be 10% of the total 10,840,586, and the difference is gonna go in line public services.
So the total, overall, the total stays the same. It's just the
Okay,
difference.
so then you want to change the line for public services then, correct?
Absolutely. Yes, we've changed it.
Okay, but that's not in this, in the amendments?
No, like, okay, originally it was a transposition error that we had. We corrected it. We'll do an amendment 7 if that makes you most comfortable, but it would be more of a Scrivener's error because it went to the wrong place. I think Matt Moak the other day testified to that when he was giving his testimony.
Yeah, I understand. I'm not trying to be difficult. It just seems to me that all the numbers should be correct. That's all. Thank you.
We'll prepare an amendment number 7 at a later date. We'll do it on the floor.
Because I believe there is actually an amendment 7 before us also today. So that would have to be amendment number 8.
Better give me time to write it up.
Any further discussion on amendment number 6? Any further discussion on amendment number 6? Is there a request for previous roll on amendment number 6?
I'll make that request.
All right. Is there an objection to previous roll?
Action.
All right. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Davis. Alderman Vaquero.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingracia.
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderman Coder.
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
President Reed.
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
11 aye votes.
By a vote, you have sustained the motion of Alderman from the 23rd and adopted amendment number 6. Alderman from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the committee. I believe there is an amendment number 7, and I believe this is from Alderman Oldenburg. I'd be happy to turn over to him if you'd like to handle it. It's his amendment. Okay.
All right. Alderman from the 16th, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Amendment 7, it should have been in the Google Drive, but I do notice it's consistent with what Alderwoman Ingracia was bringing up earlier. I don't think some of the amendment languages have made it into the board bills that were posted in the Google Drive. Because I know that Amendment 7 did not. So I do want to notate that. I don't know if it's appropriate. We can certainly vote on the amendments, but I do feel like the board bill, the body of the board bill needs to be changed, obviously. But with that being said, board bill number 7, if there are a lot of members on this committee that were on our Ways and Means Committee, this is a friendly amendment. I know both sponsors are aware of it. This is where effectively we are isolating and making sure, rather underscoring that $1 million of the CDBG CV monies are earmarked and will support the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the affordable housing production efforts. So that's how this amendment reads. It basically on page 7, line 17, it will add to the end of that paragraph, the end of that sentence that reads, not to exceed the total appropriation of CDBG funds, and we will insert CDA shall expend 1 million of the 10,840,586,000 of the CDBG CV funds in the area of affordable housing production to the extent the U.S. Department of Housing and Development rules and regulations allow. Again, just sort of keeping, I think, the Ways and Means Committee's promise that that $1 million it would go in the effort of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund uses to support affordable housing production.
All right, thank you, Alderman. And trying to reach out to the mayor's office to find out about how they got the line numbers wrong on some of the bills and correct on other ones. I'm thinking that we may take this bill up in the morning.
Yeah.
I think that.
I did, Mr. President, the Alderman from the 6th, their ons didn't make it either. I did,
yeah.
At least what was in the Google Drive.
Yeah, so Mr. Conway? Mr. Conway, here, hey, Mr. Conway, look, all I need you all to do is to clean up the bill, have one copy of it so everybody has the same copy, and we'll take this up. I don't even know if we can take it up in the morning now. We actually cannot take it up in the morning now. Maybe we can, we will look at suspending the rules down at next week when we get the bill back for a second reading or something like that, because right now there are too many copies of it floating around, and it appears that that you all may have sent it out differently to different people or whatever.
Mr. President, I think we sent everything to the clerk, and we worked with him, but we will
Can I say something?
work with the clerk this afternoon or this evening to resolve the line item problem between the Google version.
Right.
Mr. Clerk? Mr. Clerk?
Mr. President, the version that is in the Google Drive is the original bill. The original bill has not been amended. And therefore, what you have is the original bill, and then in another folder, the other amendments.
Okay.
After the amendments have been adopted, they would be incorporated into a bill that would be placed upon the website. But you cannot put an amended bill in the Google Drive that has not been voted upon.
Exactly.
So there are 7 amendments in the folders and the original bill. So let's not get confused.
All right, perfect.
Mr.
So, Alderman from the 16th?
Just a point of order. Is it possible that we don't adjourn the meeting and that way we don't have to reopen it? We can just
We
continue
can do that.
tomorrow and we can figure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That is very possible. We could do this at 8:30. It's not gonna take that long to do what we gotta do.
All right, so we will, Mr. Clerk, are you gonna work with the mayor's office to assure that they have everything in order for tomorrow morning?
Absolutely.
All right,
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, so we will continue this meeting at 8:30 tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Mr. President, is it possible to ask questions about Amendment 7, or would you prefer to wait until
I'm
tomorrow?
trying to do.
I think we'll wait till tomorrow at this point.
Mr. President,
Yes. I'm sorry, wait a minute. Alderman from the 19th. You're muted. You need to unmute yourself.
okay, here I am. So I was trying to do the same thing because on the document, the original document on Exhibit A has $5 million for construction for affordable housing. So that number would have to be changed if we're adding another million to it.
All right, and so you could talk, can you get that to the clerk, and any other changes like that people will need to assure that everything is ready to go tomorrow morning at 8:30? Get them to the clerk right away. All right?
Okay.
All right, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you in the morning.
Bye.